this in?
Terry's right here with me.
Play it safe, Ed. All I need is just a few minutes.
They kidnapped Terry.
Please, let me help you, will you?
No, Nick. I can't take that chance, don't you understand?
On this episode of Old Joe's Reminiscence, when a probe agent goes after thugs who robbed gold bars off an armored truck, his family becomes collateral damage. Now it's up to Nick Bianco to track down the vigilante agent while trying to recover the man's kidnapped daughter. Tony Franciosa stars. I'm about to review the 14th episode of Search. It's another episode that I don't remember seeing before. That's really hard to believe because back in 1973, Search was my favorite show. So did I skip this one somehow? The episode was first shown on Wednesday, January 24th, 1973, a few days after my 14th birthday. Oh, to be a teenager again. So, since I don't remember seeing the episode, it'll be like watching it for the first time 50 years late. Remember, I don't hold back the spoilers, so if you've not seen the episode, I strongly suggest that you take a look at it first. Then, we can take the 24-carat hit. You'll have to excuse my voice on this one. I picked up some sort of a bug. I should really stop watching the teasers because they don't usually bring back any memories for me and they often spoil parts of the episode. But they're tough to skip since they're at the beginning of each episode on the DVD. This episode's opening is even more unusual than the one for episode 13 was. Two men are working in a scrapyard late at night. They're crushing metal into cubes, which they then place onto a truck. A man dressed in a suit, who I first thought was Nick Bianco, is climbing around the piles of metal. Then, we see VCR Cameron at a totally new-looking, bright, spacious probe control. Nick Bianco is there beside Cam's command console. Cam says, "No heroics." A man whose name we will find out is Staber is walking below the agent. Staber is played by Walt Davis, who was very active in the industry playing bit parts. This was one of the few times that Walt's character actually got a name. He's usually credited or uncredited as Man or something simple like Soldier. But here he's Staber, who happens to look up. Agent Ed Bain dives onto Staber. The two men struggle and Staber's gun goes off.
Trauma response on EKG.
Vital signs are weak, but still functioning.
Cam calls an ambulance and the police.
His friend's still around here somewhere.
Staber's accomplice also fires at probe agent Ed Bain, who's played by Dane Clark.
Dane Clark was born Bernard Zainville in Brooklyn on February 18, 1912. He graduated from Cornell and law school, but he found it difficult to find a job in the 1930s. He tried many things, but he settled on acting. Broadway led to Hollywood, where he signed with Warner Brothers. It's said that his stage name he started using in 1943 in Action in the North Atlantic was given to him by Humphrey Bogart. His recurring series roles were as Dan Miller in Wire Service in 1956 and as Slate Shannon in the 1959 series Bold Venture. He was Lieutenant Tragg in 14 episodes of The New Perry Mason in 1973 and 4. He turned down the role of Captain Smith in James Cameron's Titanic in 1996 due to his declining health. Dane Clark died of lung cancer on September 11, 1998.
Bianco heads for the door. He says he's going to help his fellow probe agent. Well, how's he going to get out there before the police? That Jensen Interceptor's fast, but it can't be that fast. Bain chases the suspect around in the scrapyard until the man reaches for his car door. And that's when Bain pops up from behind the car with a gun aimed at the man. Bain has the man, whose name is Roman, push the gun across the car's roof. Roman is played by William Smith.
Born on March 24, 1933, William Smith started acting in films at the age of 9 and he didn't stop until he was in his late 80s. If he wasn't acting in a movie like Any Which Way You Can, or on a television show like Kung Fu, he was doing stunts or voiceovers. He also did foreign language translations for films, thanks to his learning languages during his days in the Korean conflict and the NSA. He was a bodybuilder and trainer between gigs. William Smith died on July 5, 2021 at the age of 88.
Bain mentions a third man, Ellis.
Never heard of him.
VCR Cameron is watching all this happen on his monitor. I was temporarily taken out of the moment when I realized that the video that Cam's watching is coming from the wrong vantage point. He should be seeing Roman from Ed Bain's scanner's point of view. Both men are framed in the video on the probe control screen, so where is this picture coming from? We get plenty of exposition from this scene. Ed mentions 1,200 pounds of gold bullion stolen from an armored truck robbery, Emmett Brugman wanting to come back from Europe to set up shop here, and a man called Ellis.
Where's Ellis?
I don't think you're going to like the answer, Mr. Bain.
Is that Ellis? No, he is Emmett Brugman, played by Nehemiah Persoff.
Nehemiah Persoff was born on August 2, 1919 in Jerusalem. His family moved to the United States when he was about 10 years old. He started performing in theater productions, but he was drafted into the army during World War II. He continued with stage work after the war and transitioned to acting in films. His first screen appearance was a small part in The Naked City in 1948. He was a very popular choice for portraying bad guys in film and on the tube. He was active in the industry for more than 50 years before he retired and concentrated on painting watercolors. Nehemiah Persoff died at the age of 102 on April 5, 2022.
So Brugman is already back.
That's right, Mr. Bain. I'm already back in the country.
He says that Mr. Ellis is at Bain's house, holding his wife and daughter for insurance.
Linda?
Yes, Ed?
His home is supposed to be covered by security. Linda Bain is played by Rhoda Williams. She voiced Drusilla in the Walt Disney Cinderella.
If anything happens to my wife and daughter, you won't have to worry about any trial.
Bianco, are you monitoring? I'm linked up. I'll head for Bain's house.
Brugman tells Bain that he'll let the family go if Ed forgets all about him and the gold. Well, after a little bit of soul-searching, Bain hands over the gun.
All right, tell him. Tell him we got a deal.
Mr. Ellis, our business has been concluded. You may leave, but I suggest that you take Mr. Bain's daughter along. We may find a hostage very useful.
Right.
So whatever happened to being able to trust a criminal boss to keep his word during a hostage negotiation? The part of Denny Ellis is being played by Lenny Montana, an ex-professional wrestler who is best known for his role as Luca Brasi in The Godfather.
You come with me.
Ellis, what's happening? I wouldn't try anything, Mr. Bain.
This assignment sure went south fast. Where are the police and the ambulance that Cam called? And what is World Security's doing meddling in the investigation of an armored truck robbery? Shouldn't that be handled by the FBI? The two criminals drive off. Bain gets in the salvage yard's vehicle and drives away too. He's in shock and he's bleeding from his arm wound. At the Bain residence, Bianco watches as Mrs. Bain's body is carried out of the house on a covered stretcher. Ed Bain is listening in as Bianco reports that Terry Bain is missing. Neighbors saw her leaving with Ellis. Nick hesitates to report the death of Linda Bain, with Ed listening in. But Ed demands to know about his wife.
What about Linda?
I'm sorry, Ed. There's nothing we can do.
There was supposed to be a 24-hour watch on his home. Cam admits that they effed up. Big time.
I won't lie to you, Ed. It was a foul-up. Security Division pulled off their men to cover a high-priority case.
What's a higher priority than protecting our own personnel?
It was a mistake. I admit it. Security admits it.
Actually, with the risk involved, I'm surprised that they actually employ married people for these dangerous field assignments. Bain loses it. He shuts off his scanner. He's going off to find Brugman, Roman, and Ellis on his own.
Over and out.
We've lost Bain's signal.
What?
Can't pick it up.
Find it. Find it.
I don't get Cam's reaction when Bain's scanner goes dead. If he turned it off, he turned it off. Lockwood does that plenty of times. Cam just overreacts. Nick decides to check out a boat that Ed had visited before he went after Roman.
Admittedly, it's a thin lead.
This is the last place that Ed hit before he closed in on Roman.
Nick boards a boat. That's when Pearson, the boat's skipper, comes out of the wheelhouse.
You Pearson?
It depends now, doesn't it?
Pearson is played by George Murdoch. He's also known for playing a lot of small roles over the years. I recognized him as Dr. Salick from the original Battlestar Galactica.
Somebody else has already been around asking the same questions. I still don't know nothing about Ellis.
Oh, well, listen, naturally, I don't blame you. I mean, who wants to be associated with a known smuggler?
When he takes a swing at Bianco, Nick roughs him up a little bit and threatens to break some of the man's limbs. He says that Ellis used to work for him until the man had stolen a gun from Pearson's pistol collection about 2 months ago. Pearson went to the skipper inn to confront Ellis and to get his gun back, but a couple of goons worked him over pretty good. Once again, I'm distracted by the angle of the shot on Cam's monitor, back at probe control. Nick's scanner is on the ring of his left hand, but the shot we see is coming from over Bianco's right shoulder. It's as if Nick has a film crew following him around in this episode. We cut to a large warehouse where Roman and Ellis are holding the girl, Terry Bain, played by Annette O'Toole.
Annette O'Toole was born in Houston, Texas on April 1, 1952. Her mother was a dance instructor, so it's not surprising that Annette was dancing from an early age. She was only 13 when she first appeared on The Danny Kaye Show. She followed that up with an acting role on My Three Sons. She continued appearing in television shows throughout her teen years, and as an adult she added film performances. She is best known for appearing in 136 episodes of Smallville. Since then, she has concentrated on theater productions.
Brugman calls the men to tell them that he's leaving for Europe on a morning flight.
What do we do with the Bain girl?
You gonna be out at sea tomorrow? When you're in deep water?
I have to spell it out too.
Now, if you grew up in the 1960s or 70s, the voice of Wally Cox should be instantly recognizable.
Now let us sing number 43, Bringing in the Sheaves.
He was the voice of Underdog in the Underdog cartoons, and he was the upper left square on the daytime Hollywood squares for many years. Wally Cox plays Brother Sam in this episode. It's his last on-screen role, as he died of a heart attack at the young age of 48, just a few weeks after this episode first aired. As Brother Sam, we hear him lead the congregation of the North Star Mission in singing the instantly recognizable hymn, Bringing in the Sheaves. After the service, Brother Sam tells Bianco that Ellis had been brought there 2 months ago by a man named Donner or Dunner, after Ellis had been beaten in a bar fight.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Sam. You've been extremely helpful. Thank you.
That's what we're here for.
Nick makes a generous cash donation to the mission as gratitude for the information Brother Sam has provided.
Right in, brother.
Right on, brother.
We see Ed Bain stumble into a bar. The bartender, played by longtime character actor Lane Bradford, says,
Hey, you look like you could use a double, pal.
"Yep, that's exactly what I think of whenever I see someone stumbling around looking as if he's drunk. I say, that man needs a double." And without as much as an ask, he starts pouring a drink.
He's Roman. Danny Ellis. That's not a brand name, it's request.
The man's reaction appears to be one of fear.
Whatever you got wouldn't cover my funeral expenses.
When Bain leaves the bar, the camera lingers on a man in a sailor's cap who's shooting pool. We cut to Bianco. He asks to meet with Ed. Ed turns his scanner on just long enough to arrange the meeting place. Nick was expecting a face-to-face meeting, but Ed is calling the shots here. He's hiding in an alley when Bianco arrives there. He tells Bianco to turn off his lights and stay in the car. While Tony Franciosa is going through his dialogue, I noticed a shadow, probably a film crew member, move onto and then back off of his face. Nick tells Ed that he can't keep running. He gets out of the car and he runs toward the alley where Ed is hiding. Ed takes off, but there's no way he can outrun Nick. Nick goes down face first, allowing Ed to make a getaway.
Bianco, what happened?
He covered himself for a fast exit.
It seems that Ed has booby-trapped the alley with a tripwire that caught Bianco by surprise. Nick decides that if Ed's gone silent, two can play at that game. He turns off his scanner, too. Back at probe control, Cam is about to pull his hair out.
Two agents playing blind man's bluff with each other. This is insanity.
Now, I want to take a few seconds to say that I prefer the darker, more compact room full of closely grouped workstations to this cavernous, whitewashed probe control set.
According to our sources, NBC was at a loss for what to do with Search. As had happened a few years earlier with Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, the network had failed to identify the show's target audience. Wednesdays at 10 wasn't the best time slot for a show that appealed to a younger audience. Additionally, the futuristic gadgetry didn't really appeal to older viewers. Ratings were mediocre at best. After the initial order was produced, NBC wanted the show to take a different direction. The sets were brightened up but the stories became darker. Leslie Stevens was gone as the showrunner and all but the major stars were replaced. There was to be less reliance on advanced electronics and more on detective work in the field. So, the show lost its appeal to its young sci-fi fans, but it never really seemed to attract the older crowd. Ratings fell even lower. When the show was cancelled, it was labeled as for export only and was only broadcast abroad. U.S. fans who had grown fond of the show in 1972 never got to see it again until the DVD release.
They changed out all the probe specialists at this time, too. Ed is still stumbling around when the man who we saw at the pool table grabs him.
Heard you asking questions about Ellis and Roma.
Ed asks, "Are you friends of theirs?"
Not exactly. But I got a strong hunch you ain't either.
Act 3 begins at probe control. VCR Cameron is being ushered into the control room by Miss James, one of the new probe specialists.
So, Mr. Bianco finally decided to contact
Yes, sir.
How charitable of him.
Yes, sir.
He's not on the monitor.
No, sir. He's on a payphone calling in.
A payphone? There's $5 million worth of sophisticated equipment around here, and our own agent has to use a payphone. Hello?
I wonder if that red telephone is a nod to Burgess Meredith's portrayal of the notorious villain the Penguin on the Batman television series. Miss James gives Nick some leads to follow. This is the first of 8 appearances by actress Pamela Jones in her role as Miss James on Search. Meanwhile, Ed Bain is tied to a bed. He tries to play mind games with his captor, Sam Donner, played by Michael Conrad.
Michael Conrad was born on October 16, 1925 in New York. He served in the Army during World War II. After the war, Conrad attended college and drama school. His tall stature and muscular physique gave the look of a no-nonsense tough guy, but he had a terrific sense of humor. He started appearing on television in the late 50s, when the networks still produced shows in New York. He moved to Hollywood in 1963 and appeared in several series every year for 2 decades. He is best remembered for his Emmy-winning role as Desk Sergeant Phil Esterhaus on the police drama Hill Street Blues. He died during the show's 4th season of filming. Michael Conrad died on November 22, 1983. He was 58.
Donner calls Roman, and he says he wants to meet to renegotiate and sweeten his deal. He leaves the room for his meeting, leaving Ed tied to that bed. Meanwhile, Nick is working his way down his list of leads. Donner wants his $10,000 payment upped to $100,000. Roman tells Donner that Mr. Brugman doesn't like to be squeezed. Danny Ellis is behind Donner, and 2 slugs from his pistol are more than enough to silence the man. Let's go back to Bianco. I don't think I'd trust leaving my expensive car parked on the street in such a shady part of the city. He climbs the stairs looking for Mr. Donner's room, and when he knocks on the door, Ed Bain shouts for help.
Get help!
Nick kicks the door in, and he unties his friend. He tries to help Ed up, but the man appears to be too weak to stand up. When Nick turns his back on Bain, I can predict what's going to happen next. Ed sneaks up behind Nick, and he gives him one of those quick karate chops to the neck, knocking him out. Ed reaches into Nick's pocket, searching for his car keys. He finds them, and then he takes off. Nick comes to, and he runs down the stairs just in time to see Ed drive off. He requests that Cam have a car and a gun sent to him.
We'll comply on the car, negative on the gun.
Ed is out of control. He's a loose cannon. Nick assures him that he won't let Ed or Terry get killed. At the beginning of Act 4, a sedan rounds a corner with a woman behind the wheel. She is Miss Lewis in a one-off played by the lovely Anitra Ford, who was one of Bob Barker's Beauties from The Price is Right, from 1972 until 1976.
Tanks full. 45 automatic loading. On safety.
You're a model of efficiency, Miss Lewis.
I also have a message for Mr. Cameron. He wants you to continue scanner contact.
I'll take that under advisement.
Before getting out of the car, Miss Lewis hands Bianco a slip of paper. It's an address for him to check. At first, I thought she was giving Nick her phone number. Ed Bain had persuaded the phone company to trace that call Mr. Donner had made to Roman. And when he gets to the warehouse, there's nobody there. He does notice some writing on the wall. It says Pier 8 and what appears to be the name of a ship. A locket he finds on the floor belongs to his daughter, because of course it does. We see Roman and Ellis lead the girl up the gangway to the ship. When Ellis wants to know what they're going to do with the girl, Roman says he has his instructions. Terry Bain realizes that they're going to kill her, just like they killed her mother.
It'll be different, I promise you.
I noticed the way the girl's mouth moves when she says mother, it looks to me as if she might have said mommy, and it was dubbed over later. I'm thinking it may have been scripted as mommy with a younger girl in mind, but Annette O'Toole is around 20 years old playing a teenager, so they may have decided to change it to mother. She does say daddy later in the episode. Ed pulls up to the pier in Nick's car. The name of the ship matches what he saw written on the wall earlier, and in case we forgot, they cut to Nick looking at that same clue on the wall.
Pier 8.
While Nick is on his way to Pier 8, Ed knocks out the man who was stationed at the gangway, and he climbs aboard the ship. Nick arrives at the pier, where he has the folks back at Probe Control translate the boat's name.
Nordstjerner. Nordstern. It means North Star in Swedish.
He requests that Cam check the shipping schedule. It's due to depart in less than an hour. Nick decides to shimmy up a mooring line to sneak aboard. Meanwhile, Ed is following the path that the men took with his daughter. He looks weak, and he has blood running down his hand from that wound in his upper arm. Nick is crawling around inside the ship. He makes a last-ditch effort to get Ed to cooperate and work together with him. Roman tells Ellis to take the girl below while he goes to bribe the captain. Ed collapses onto a grated metal walkway. This allows him to see his daughter being led to the hold by Ellis. He activates his scanner and contacts Nick. Ed tells Bianco where Ellis and Terry are. Nick finds Ellis. He aims his gun, but Terry is struggling against Ellis's grip. Nick can't get a clean shot without the risk of hitting the girl. There is a rope tied to the railing right in front of Bianco. How convenient. If we paid any attention during the teaser, we know what's going to happen next. I think the teasers go a bit too far, more often than not. Ed knocks over a bucket that was left on the steps rather conveniently, or inconveniently depending on your point of view. And that catches Ellis and the girl's attention. Terry starts screaming, "Daddy, Daddy!" When Ellis raises his gun to take a shot at Ed Bain, Terry is able to pull away from him. Ed rushes toward his daughter, while Nick does a Tarzan from the railing above and knocks Ellis down. Ellis does a somersault and then picks up one of those compressed cubes from the scrapyard to throw at Nick. I would think it would be too heavy for him to lift, especially when we discovered that the gold was hidden in those cubes. Nick does a stomach kick, and Ellis drops the cube as he falls backward. Roman is still out there somewhere. He runs down to the hold and he takes a shot at Bianco. Nick returns fire. They exchange a few more rounds, and Roman tumbles down the stairs.
Now you can tell me what happened to that 1,200 pounds of gold.
All gift wrapped and ready for unwrapping. The gold is compressed in these dark car bodies. Roman and Ellis were going to take him to Stockholm, where Emmett Brugman would have picked him up there.
That's an ingenious idea. It could have worked.
Yeah, but it didn't. When Brugman lands, I suggest you have Interpol waiting. All his gold bought him was murder one. Let's go. Terry, come on, let's go.
Ed and Terry walk off camera together, leaving Nick Bianco alone in the hold. It's a very sad ending for a series that typically ends on a lighter note. It's another one that I don't remember watching the first time, or even the second time if it aired more than once, so this was like watching it for the first time right now. The series was typically panned by critics, but I've always enjoyed it, even if I'm presenting it with a critical eye. Don't take my pointing out small blunders, as I see them, as dislike for the series. I really enjoy it. Hey, if you liked the review, go ahead and hit the like button. I know it's easy to forget, and that's why I wait till the end to remind you. While we're at it, if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and become a subscriber now. Thanks to all of my current subscribers. I hope you're enjoying my content. If you activate the notification bell, you'll know when I post my next video. Until then, save it!